This is FamilySearch.org. FamilySearch.org is owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons, and it's a really great source to find genealogy information. In fact, it's one of my favorite of all of the free sources that we're going to be looking at today. First, I'm going to sign in. It doesn't cost anything to create an account with FamilySearch. And here is the home screen once I've signed in, and we're going to get straight into searching. When you come up here to search, it gives you the option to search through records, to look through family trees, genealogies, books, lots of different things. I like to just click on search and then do a general search and then narrow my results from there. So let's look for good old Joseph Clifton again. And this time I'm not going to put in a ton of information because I want to show you how to start broad and go narrow with your research. So I'm about to show you why it's really important to either A, give as much information as possible about the person that you're searching for, or B, to learn how to narrow your search results. So when I typed in Joseph Clifton Holland, 455,265 results showed up. That's almost 500,000 people, or 500,000 records have a Clifton Holland, a Joseph Clifton Holland, a Joseph Holland, or a Joseph C. Holland somewhere in the record information. FamilySearch offers several different ways to refine or narrow your search results. One way to do that is to come over to the left-hand side of the screen and use these refinements. You can search a life event, so find documents related to these categories. You can find documents that link someone with a spouse or parents or a sibling. You can also narrow your search by only saying, I only want to see records that were created in a certain place, or you can restrict, say I only want to see census records, and down here at the bottom are some more filters. So I know that Joseph Clifton Holland, my Joseph Clifton Holland, was born in 1929, so I'm going to narrow my search results by birth year. So the first thing, narrowing it down to people born in the 1900s, I've already cut out a lot of people. Let's see if I can narrow it down a little more. So if I come down here and click on birth year again and click on 1900, now I can filter by decade, and I'm going to go to the 1920s, and that cuts it down even more to 10,000 people. So now when I look at these records, I have a pretty good shot that some of these are going to be my Joseph Clifton Holland. Let's narrow it down even more. So let's restrict records by location. And we're going to restrict our records to the United States. And we're going to restrict records to Virginia because that is where Joseph Clifton is from. So we're going to update our search. And this is going to cut it down even more to about 7,000 people. 7,000 records. So these are all records of Joseph Clifton Hollands who lived in Virginia. Here is a 1940 census entry for Joseph Clifton Holland. Some of the information that you'll find on FamilySearch, you'll find on Ancestry for Virginians and in Heritage Quest. But it's a good idea to look at the same information on multiple sites because sometimes different sites and different databases, they have different scanned copies. So if the scan of the census page is blurry on Heritage Quest's site, it might be clearer on FamilySearch. So when I click on the record, instead of taking me to a separate page, it expands the record and I can look at the information about Joseph Clifton Holland from the 1940 census, or I can click to see the document. And just like in Heritage Quest and Ancestry for Virginians, I can zoom in. I can look at all of the headings. Unfortunately, Family Search does not highlight the information like Heritage Quest does, so you do have to do a little bit more digging, but here's Joseph Clifton Holland. Another way you can further refine your results is by going up to the Collections tab. The Collections tab shows all of the different groupings of records that contain your search information. I am going to look at Virginia births and christenings, and let's see. Oh, that's the wrong date range. You have to pay attention to that. So let's go back up to collections. I would like to try and find my grandfather's birth certificate. Let's see if that is an option on here. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like Family Search has more recent birth information. But that's okay. This is still a really great source because it has a ton of information. Let's talk about using Family Search and specifically census information to further our research into our family tree. If you'll remember from my pedigree chart and from the previous searches that we've been doing, I didn't know the names of my great-grandparents. But thanks to our previous searches, I know that their names were Jesse and Maddie. And because my current research is focused on tracing the males in the Holland family, I want to see how far back I can trace the male members of my family. So I'm going to start with Joseph Clifton Holland. And I know that he was born in Virginia in 1929, and we're going to search for him. And we're going to go up to collections, and we're going to narrow it to the 1930 census. And here he is with his father, his mother, and his siblings, just like we saw him before. I'm going to take this information and I'm going to translate it into another search to try and go back another generation. And there's a lot of really good information that I can get from this record. So I know that Jesse Holland in 1930 is 34 years old. So if we do the math, 1930 minus 34 means that he would be born in 1896. And I have another great clue for finding the next generation in his family history. Look down here when it says relation to head of the household, mother. This is Jesse Holland's mother. So I'm going to use these two pieces of information to try and figure out who Jesse Holland's father was. So I know that he was born in 1896 based on his age according to the 1930 census, and I know his mother's name was Cherry Holland. So let's track him backwards. And luckily, censuses take place every 10 years. So in the 1920 census and the 1910 census and the 1900 census, Jesse Holland should show up. And hopefully in one of those censuses, he will show up with his father. So let's go up here to the top and let's do a new search. Let's search for Jesse Holland. And we aren't sure where he was born, probably in Virginia, but we know he was born around 1896. Let's see what we can find. So here's Jesse Linwood Holland, and we want to use census information, but this record popped up, Virginia births and christenings, 1584 to 1917. And if we look over here, we can see that his mother's name, that Cherry Marie Holland, Cherry M. Holland, pops up again. So this is the same Jesse Holland who's my great-grandfather. And according to this, it says his father's name was Joseph F. Holland. But just like we talked about when we were doing our research papers, and like we've talked about in other videos, we want to have at least 2 sources verifying this information. So we can consider this birth record as one source that gives us proof that Jesse's father's name was Joseph F. Let's see if the census data backs this up. So we're going to come up here to the collections, and we're going to come down to census is, and let's just hop straight back to the 1900 census. And so we've got a lot of Jesse Hollins in the census. Let's refine and restrict our records to records that were created in Virginia. And here he is. So this, if you'll look right here, here's a Jesse L. Holland, born in 1896, mother Cherry M. Holland, and father Joseph Holland. So this is our second piece of information verifying that Jesse Holland's parents were Cherry and Joseph Holland. Another important piece of information to look at and notice is the spelling of Jesse's name. This is really important, and this is something that I would copy down into my genealogy notebook because it's an alternative spelling of his name. This is the third different spelling of his name that we've come into contact with while we've been looking for information about him. And this is important to note because not all databases search in the same way. So some databases require an exact match to this, would require an exact match to this name right here to bring up this information. However, Family Search allows users to annotate records with additional information so that all the spellings of a name can be tagged to this record, so that if I spelled Jesse with one E at the end or with an IE at the end, this record would come up as well. And let's take a look at this page of census. And I'm going to get a lot of information from this census. So, Jesse was one of the younger siblings. And let's see what his father's occupation was. It shows that his father was a farmer and that Jesse's siblings were all in school. So this is a way that we can use census information to trace our ancestry back even further. And if I searched for Joseph F. Holland, I could go back even further